Welcome to Pablo Torre Finds Out. I am Pablo Torre, and today we're going to find out what this sound is.
We can do a double team, triple team, but the NWO is the new team of the future. Sweet.
Right after this ad.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want is a great feeling. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can choose to bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Air Force Research Laboratory is partnering with Google Cloud using AI to accelerate defense research for air, space, and cyberspace forces. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
We've had many strange people on this show.
Yes.
We've had an 86-year-old grandpa. Recently, we had a NASA scientist. We had a former federal prosecutor, a U.S. senator, Action Bronson, and well beyond, and for legal reasons, I can't even say so much how beyond we tend to go. This, though, might be a new raising of the bar for what we're about to unveil here for people.
I'm really excited to make my case.
Thank you for doing this, Neil Punsalan. An honor to have you on the show.
I'm super excited. I came in with the idea of if I could just get one of the people that listen to your show, one of your devoted fan base, if I could get just one person to believe me, and I'm now at the point, I'm so excited. There's an electricity coursing through my body. I now firmly believe by the end of this, the NBA is going to put a hit on me. I think they're coming after me.
Okay. So to explain why it is that I'm not even going to push back on that right now, we got to explain that this is a story fundamentally about two things that you love. And one of those things I don't know a lot about as much as I'm surrounded by it all the time now.
Right.
And that thing is pro wrestling. This is a metaphor for a lot about our civilization. But in this case, it is concretely something that had collided, it turns out, with the NBA as recently as last year.
Tyrese Halliburton for something. It's the brass knuckles, Wade.
This Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Halliburton thing.
Jalen Brunson. Is this game 8? Not the garden.
The WWE is smart enough to use people that love wrestling, and they've done it for years. And so you have this sports moment that helps elevate WWE, helps elevate the NBA as well. And it's a great piece of sports marketing.
There was a steel chair in that. Again, that was an example of the NBA being brought into the ring.
That's right.
Somebody get the commissioner on the phone.
This story, though, is the inverse.
100% the inverse. And that's why it's so much more powerful, because it is not necessarily athletes just showing up at a professional wrestling event. It is professional wrestling bleeding into NBA games.
So where in the history of the NBA Finals, which are happening now, by the way, in the present tense as we speak, are we?
Here we go.
The wait is over. The NBA Finals are here.
The 98 Finals, obviously, Chicago Bulls, Utah Jazz, Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, and most importantly, Bob Costas and Round Ball Rock.
In my childhood memory,
17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6.
it is Bob Costas saying, Jordan, open.
Chicago with the lead.
And then we see it. We see the most famous shot in basketball history.
That's right.
The most famous NBA Finals, arguably, ever.
For certain.
It's the second three-peat for Jordan's Bulls.
That is the way everyone remembers the 98 Finals. But if you look at the 98 Finals now through a different lens, there was an apocryphal story in 1998 of Rodman skipping practice. I remembered hearing something about it as a kid, and then when I watched The Last Dance, you see it come to life and it's real.
So Dennis Rodman ran off after Game 3.
He took a detour from playing with the Bulls to become a wrestler with Hulk Hogan.
They literally have footage of Dennis Rodman running from the media
You know, like say, like you said, a playoff game, I want to go wrestle. If I did this, I go over here. If I do that, I gotta go do this. You know, they're gonna get the 100% when I'm on the court.
This is, again, just another fantastic storyline within this 98 finals. Rodman skipping practice, going to Auburn Hills, where he used to play with the Pistons.
Dennis Rodman is here at the Palace of Auburn Hills tonight for Nitro.
Ends up hitting Diamond Dallas Page over the head with a chair.
Oh my goodness, that was Rodman!
And for me, became something that as I watched it, I went, wait a minute, who's doing the documentary on Rodman skipping that practice and becoming a professional wrestler? That's what I wanted to know more about.
So I should say that our friend Jason Hare, director of The Last Dance, also has sat in the chair you're sitting at.
Right.
Dennis Rodman skipping practice was not the reason I wanted to do this with you because, again, it already been done.
Just for a moment, if I might have the floor. By the time I finish this episode, at worst, what I'm going to present you, you will see this as the greatest sports marketing moment you've ever seen. At best, I believe I'm putting my thumb on the scale and forever affecting the GOAT debate. Who's the greatest basketball player of all time? You're never going to see it the same way ever again.
The unifying theory of modern American life now is that everything is pro wrestling. The presidency is wrestling.
Oh my God! The hostile takeover of Donald Trump on Vince McMahon has happened at WrestleMania 23.
The U.S. Department of Education is actually wrestling.
CEO of World Wrestling Entertainment, Linda McMahon. Thank you.
Even my beef with Bill Simmons, I am told, is wrestling.
Pablo Torre's here. We're beefing.
Yeah.
Big beef.
What camera can I look into just to stress how angry I am?
It's such a beef.
But with the Indiana Pacers now playing the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA Finals, what we wanted to do here was dive into what we believe to be the most underappreciated actual wrestling crossover in the history of sports. And to do it, I needed to give a little bit of work to Neil Punsalan, the only comedy writer in the world who has made television shows with both Norm Macdonald and also Marshawn Lynch. But the most crucial point on Neil's resume, even more than the fact that Neil happens to be half Filipino, is the fact that he has watched more pro wrestling than I ever have and ever will, particularly over the last 25 years. Because Neil's theory here about the 1998 NBA Finals turns out to not be fan fiction. This is going to be a story about sports business and billionaires and backroom deals. And also chairs. Lots of chairs. So where our paths diverge as Filipino Americans who remember like dial-up internet is that I went to grade school with lots of wrestling fans, but never really became one myself. I'm actually shocked by the degree to which professional wrestling is relevant to my line of work now.
Yes, totally. Professional wrestling is like silent film. You could turn off the audio and kind of follow along, and it plays everywhere. It plays at every age. It plays in every country. It is these men who are putting their lives and their well-being on the line to act out this soap opera. It's just insanity. I love it.
Oh, let's get ready to suck it!
What is a suck it gesture if not Charlie Chaplin?
Can I go in a little bit into the history of wrestling here?
I know so little about it, so please.
Let me tell you a little bit about it. Pro wrestling used to be in regional factions. So there would be a Memphis team, there'd be a Georgia team. And all of the different little sort of families were spread out across the country.
Coming up next on Superstation WTBS, it's exciting championship wrestling from Georgia.
Vince McMahon buys the World Wrestling Federation from his father.
Indeed, it's the dawning of a new era. And this magnificent building, but yet an ending of another era.
And then decides, like Michael Corleone from The Godfather, to roll up all of the factions and dominates the pro wrestling landscape for a decade plus.
Thank you. It is indeed a pleasure to be associated with WTBS, and we promise to bring you the greatest in professional wrestling entertainment in the world today. We will have this week, as a matter of fact, exclusive footage on a matchup involving the Iron Sheik, who hails from Tehran, Iran.
I'm from Tehran, Iran. 10,000 miles.
Then from there, a man who claims to have the most impressive physique in all of professional wrestling, Jesse the Body Ventura.
The most beautiful body in professional wrestling. And I got something to talk about everywhere I've been going.
So in other words, he rolls up these teams and makes a league.
That's exactly right. One of the companies Vince buys is Georgia Championship Wrestling. There's a proviso in their contract that says the matches have to be recorded in Ted Turner's studio. Vince McMahon does not want to have to do that. He does not want that overhead.
So Ted Turner as in Turner Sports.
Correct.
By the way.
Billionaire.
When it comes to the basketball interweaving here, that's the boss of all of the stuff we know with inside the NBA.
That's right. So Vince doesn't want to pay that money. So he ends up selling the time slot back to Ted Turner. Ted Turner then takes that time slot and fills it with WCW World Championship Wrestling.
World Championship Wrestling has always been one of our most popular programs. The Braves have become a winning team in baseball. CNN is the leader in world's news and information. And now WCW is about to dominate the globe in professional wrestling.
So the guy, the billionaire who owns CNN, owns Turner Sports, all that stuff, he starts his own rival league.
That's right. 88, he starts that league. In 95, they premiered a television show called WCW Nitro.
Get it 100% live and ringside. 2 hours of WCW Monday Nitro.
Huge moment in professional wrestling. Live television. That's a big, gigantic part of this. 100% live. And it becomes a head-to-head feud with WWF's Monday Night Raw.
But WWF is bigger, better, and better than ever on USA.
It's called the Monday Night War.
It's kind of like as if two Monday Night Footballs were competing.
Yes, perfect.
And so I'm envisioning, right, Vince McMahon as one commissioner.
Right.
Who is his rival counterpart at WCW?
A legend in the game. An absolute legend. Hall of Famer. His name is Eric Bischoff.
My name is Eric Bischoff. I live in Cody, Wyoming. And in 1998, that was a minute ago, I was president of World Championship Wrestling.
He was a janitor at an animal hospital. He actually got a sales job at WCW to start and then ended up getting bumped up to be on camera because the announcer that WCW had got arrested.
Welcome back to TBS. I'm Eric Bischoff, and this is a WCW magazine.
We could spend, and others have, multi-part docu-series level time on any individual person in the story. We're just like glossing over, and Vince McMahon's here.
Right. And again, the context here is that the WWF was the Corleone family. They dominated the space for a decade plus. WCW using the live broadcast and adult themes and doing the suckets and like all that sort of pushing the envelope stuff. That's all Bischoff. Bischoff does that. WWF had stayed out of that water forever on purpose. Bischoff does it. WCW gets the ratings lead from WWF and holds it for 83 straight weeks.
We had to convince our existing television partners, which was TBS and TNT at the time. Nobody within that community that we were doing business with really looked at WCW as a competitor to WWE. They were so far ahead of us, we were an afterthought. And I needed to change that perception within Madison Avenue, the advertising world, which is why I brought in Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan films mean mega profits at the box office and on video.
I brought in Hulk Hogan for media attention.
And this summer, Hulk Hogan stars in the major theatrical release, Mr. Nanny.
The agencies all of a sudden started looking at us differently because we had what they believed to be the biggest star in wrestling at the time.
World
World Championship Wrestling presents Hulkamania 94, the World Tour.
And in 96, Bischoff gets Hogan to turn heel.
Even I had to reckon with this.
Yeah.
The New World Order.
The T-shirts.
Was black and white.
Yes.
Like villains. And their big thing in a pay-per-view world was what?
Hogan turns heel at a pay-per-view event called Bash at the Beach.
Battle lines have been drawn for the war that will be heard around the world. It's WCW's Bash at the Beach.
So WCW, 83 straight weeks, they've got control of professional wrestling. That forces the WWF to also go live and usher in their Attitude Era. That's Stone Cold. That's The Rock.
Right.
They go adult-themed as well. First time in their company's history they start doing that. And with the power of Vince and WWE, the brand, and all of the wrestlers, they come back against WCW. But Eric Bischoff has an ace up his sleeve.
I got a text message from Hulk Hogan saying, hey, call me ASAP 911. And he rarely ever did that. So I, before I even got into the hotel, got on my cell phone and called Hulk. And he said, hey, I just hung up with Dennis Rodman. And he really wants to get into wrestling, wants to get involved. WWF at the time had already pitched him. I think Shane McMahon had reached out to Dennis. But Dennis wanted to work with Hulk. He didn't want to just work in wrestling. He wanted to work in wrestling with Hulk. And since Hulk was at WCW, that's where I got tagged in.
So Dennis is here. And as I imagine it, this is a real top-flight wrestling free agent.
100%. Rodman dates Madonna in 94. He wears the wedding dress in 96. He kicks the cameraman in 97.
So when does Dennis Rodman become serious about his other job?
Beginning in 97. Rodman is out promoting Double Team, which is his movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, I remember that vividly.
Yes. He goes out to promote and ends up recording a promo with Hulk Hogan announcing that he's joining NWO.
We can do a double team, triple team, but the NWO is the new team of the future. Sweet.
So the two timelines here. Pro wrestling on the one hand, the NBA and the Chicago Bulls on the other. They had just won their second straight title.
That's exactly right.
And Dennis Rodman, in the other parallel timeline of wrestling, what's he doing?
Rodman appears in the 97 Bash at the Beach, and it is an unmitigated success. Huge success for the company. They immediately want to run it back, a lot like the Bulls do. They want to run it back and have Rodman join them for the 98 Bash at the Beach.
Okay, here we are, 98. But now, WCW, what are they planning to do, given that Dennis Rodman is trying to also sell this upcoming event?
So strangely, Eric Bischoff turns to his wacky neighbor, Diamond Dallas Page.
So, and DDP, for those uninitiated.
Okay. Do you know DDP?
I know a couple of things about this man.
Yeah.
Including the fact that when it comes to silent film hand gestures, he's got
the big one.
An all-timer.
Trying to put his move on. DDP!
What a phenomenal move by Diamond Dallas Page. Powerbomb set up by Page. Diamond Cutter. I don't believe it.
The Diamond Cutter, a iconic hand gesture that he did with it. He sort of puts his two hands together.
Thumb and index finger.
Thumb and index fingers touching to create that diamond between his two hands. He points at the camera and then goes, bang!
His blonde curls.
Yes, those curls, those long curls.
I mean, look.
Covered in sweat.
You're clearly psyched.
When I call Diamond Dallas Page,
Mr. Page, first off, thank you so much for doing this. It is an honor. Gigantic fan.
Oh, my pleasure, bro.
Which is to say, you proceed to do some real investigative journalism.
I'm shocked that you've let the Fox in the Hen House and allowed me to waste so much of your time with this, but I'm so thrilled. Diamond Dallas Page tells me the best story about how he met Karl Malone.
Yeah, I'd seen Karl on The Tonight Show. Heard him talk about, I'm not a WWF fan, I'm a WCW fan. I heard him say, those guys are my favorites. And I was like, boy, that was cool of him to say. Then I was doing a signing in Houston, And they said, do you want to go see the Houston Rockets game? I was like, who are they playing? He said, they're playing the Jazz. I was like, awesome. Yeah, I'm a Malone. I'm more of a fan of players as opposed to teams. So they were up like 25. So Karl's on the bench. And it's me, one of my best friends. His name is Ross. And it's at a timeout. And Karl's like, looking up in the stands. And then he just throws up the diamond cutter sign. And Ross loses his mind. He's like, oh my God. He's reaching for his camera. But by the time he gets the camera up, he's sitting down and the quarter's on. And he says, oh my God, you got to get him to do that again. And I said, bro, I don't know him. He goes, he knows you. So afterwards, Karl had sat, we got to the next break and I pointed, we're only like 20 rows up, so we're not that far from him. And I go, boom. And then I put my arms like, hey, and he's like, threw it up again. So we got a picture of that. But then one of the guys came up to us before the end of the game and said, hey, Karl, love you guys to come backstage. So he got passes for me and my boys. And then we went back there. And at that point, someone walks up and goes, hey, Karl's outside. So I walk outside. I'm like, hey, man. He gave me a big hug. And we talked for about 10 minutes. And I said to him, if you ever want to do anything, you got my number. Call me and let me know.
So what I'm learning from your, Make-A-Wish interview, Neil, is that Karl Malone loves pro wrestling just like you.
That's right. Diamond Dallas Page has said on the record, Karl Malone did not dream of becoming a basketball player. He dreamed of becoming a professional wrestler. He's from a small town, Louisiana, born on a farm, youngest of 9 children. He watched all those small regional wrestling encampments that I talked about earlier. Mom would drive them 4 hours on I-20 to the Sportatorium in Dallas to watch professional wrestling. Huge fan.
And I reiterate, another character worthy of another separate investigation.
That's right.
I don't even have time to get into Karl Malone's actual rap sheet.
Right.
I don't.
DDP and Karl Malone hang out at the 98 All-Star Game. And then throughout the back half of the season, DDP is going to Karl Malone's house.
Which is...
It's like DDP sort of compared it to like a giant Cabela's. You know, that like humongous outdoor store and the taxidermy everywhere.
He shot and killed everything. He had the biggest elk, the biggest moose. He had a bear that was 12 feet tall. I mean,
he said it was glorious, and every like 8-year-old boy's dream to have a house like that.
And so now we're in the Western Conference Finals.
That's right.
In 1998.
Utah Jazz, Los Angeles Lakers. It's a huge moment.
Goes with Malone, Russell, Foster, Hornacek, and Stockton, Horry, Fox, O'Neal, Jones, and Fisher for the Lakers. Game 4, Utah looking for the sweep. Bennett, Salvatore, Joey.
And DDP is watching this Western Conference Finals live and gets a huge idea.
They were playing the last game against LA, and they were about to sweep them 4-0. And that's with Shaq. It's a pretty big deal. But they were 3-0 at the time. And I just started thinking to myself, I'm going to call him and see what he thinks of this. So I called him up and I said, listen, I know you've always wanted to be as a wrestler. That was your goal as a kid. I said, Rodman's coming in. So Hogan's going to tag with him again. I said, what if it was Dennis Rodman and Hulk Hogan against Diamond Dallas Page and Karl Malone? He went, ooh. I said, you got any beef with Rodman? He said, honestly? He said, no. He said, most people don't know this. Back in the day, when you came into the NBA, there was summer camp. And I don't care what contract you came in with, you roomed with another guy. And my roommate was Rodman. And he said, I thought he was, a very nice guy and very down to earth. He goes, I don't know who this guy is wearing the dresses now. He said, but that guy that I know, he's a good dude. And I would have no problem with it. He said, well, let me talk to Eric Bischoff about it. Let me see where this goes.
So just to, again, connect the parallel tracks here for a second. So Karl Malone in the NBA is so comfortable up 3-0 over Shaq and the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals that he is making a side deal for another job that is going to be, I mean, the Bash at the Beach is coming up in July.
That's right.
That's weeks after the NBA Finals.
The Utah Jazz owner, as the sort of contract gets more and more real, as the opportunity becomes concrete, the Utah Jazz owner basically turns to Karl and says, please don't get hurt.
Don't get hurt. Okay, all right.
That is from a wrestling podcast in 2020, which he joined by phone between alligator hunts.
Like alligator, like chomp, like big teeth, long head, dinosaurs, them things, alligators, yeah.
Naturally.
I've always said, if I ever had the opportunity to wrestle, I'm going to do it. My opportunity just happened to come during the NBA Finals when we put the deal together.
And what do you get paid if you're Dennis Rodman or Karl Malone to moonlight as a pro wrestler?
They share an agent. That agent told me that Dennis is making at least $1 million and Karl Malone's right there. That's a workable number for Eric Bischoff. He's got that in the budget, but that is a ton of money to put all into just talent.
Everybody buried the idea. And Bischoff's spending way too much money. He's spending money like a drug sailor. He's blowing all Ted Turner's money. And here's what I'm thinking. And this is why being in the middle of the NBA season was so important to me and why I was willing to take the $2 million risk that I did. First of all, I knew how much a full-page ad in USA Today inside the sports page, I knew exactly how much that cost because I purchased them. It was so much that I figured if I could get enough media coverage, free media, if I could tap into the sports media, particularly, morning drives and a little bit of coverage in print, I couldn't buy $2 million worth of press and get nearly what I got. That was my rationale. It was just a marketing decision.
That's kind of like influencer math.
Totally.
Like Eric Bischoff running WCW is saying, hey, I got $2 million from Ted Turner to spend. I'm putting it all on my two stars.
That's right.
And they're going to use their organic marketing.
Right. That's exactly right.
Their platforms that they have elsewhere to sell this thing.
That platform just happened to be the 1998 NBA playoffs.
I wanted as much drama, emotion, and camera time isolated on Karl and Dennis as I could possibly get for free. When we were talking about, well, maybe, if at this night show we could get Karl and Dennis here, then maybe we could set up this confrontation in the parking lot.
It's a white limousine, and we have no idea exactly what this means. Usually with the New World Order, especially with the white and the black.
So we were talking about ideas like that we could do on our show.
And Diamond Dallas Page is with him. How about this?
Somehow the conversation turned into, what if we could figure out a way to do something like that during an NBA game? Because it's one thing to do a stunt or an angle for our own audience, but what if we can do one for that audience to make our story even more exciting? And it started out as just kind of a joke, and then it started getting a little more serious. I'm using their playoffs as a wrestling promotional stunt. It could be the end of my career. I can't ask for permission, so I'm going to have to bank on forgiveness. I could probably pull this off.
Part of the calculus behind this decision is Bischoff going, if I can get these two guys to hate each other on camera and feed his match, become the promotion for his pay-per-view days after the NBA Finals is over, then it all makes sense. How do you do that? How do you get that into the NBA Finals? You need two willing accomplices. And what if I said to you, these willing accomplices happen to be two lifelong wrestling fans? Guys that grew up with each other, roomed with each other.
Who share the same agent.
It wasn't all Machiavellian in a sinister way behind the scenes trying to figure this out. It wasn't that. It was just like, hey, if by chance you guys have an opportunity to kind of get in each other's face and make sure the cameras are around when you do, that would be awesome. Not asking you to do it. That's not it. Don't put it down on paper. Don't make a note to yourself. But just say it. It happens.
This is all lined up for these two guys to bleed this into the 1998 NBA Finals.
Once we kind of said, hey, if you get away with it, it doesn't fuck up the game, boom.
Just to step back, though, for a second,
Right.
Neil, because you're talking about the most famous finals of my lifetime, which I do vividly remember.
Of course.
The 98 finals.
Yeah.
You're telling me that they're turning it into actual pro wrestling in ways that I and the world never fully appreciated.
That's exactly right. And the proof is in the pudding, Pablo. We're about to watch the 98 Finals together. It's going to blow your mind.
If you're anything like me, when you were a kid, you were a big dreamer. Maybe you dreamed of being an astronaut, maybe the president of the United States, maybe you wanted to be the shortstop for the Yankees. But now, we're dreaming of something else, like owning our own businesses. But let's be honest, launching it's total chaos. Websites, shipping, your cousin wanting to collab, it's a mess. That's where Shopify comes in. They power 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, from brands like Mattel to your aunt's candle shop. Can't design a site? Shopify's got ready-to-go templates. Need help writing copy or touching up pics? AI tools. Want customers? Built-in email and social tools. And if you get stuck, 24/7 support. Real, award-winning humans. Turn those dreams into and give them the best shot at success with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Batard. Go to shopify.com/Batard. Shopify.com/Batard.
So now I kind of feel like there's a trial happening of some kind. You're an attorney, you're bringing a case, and what I have learned from you already, what I found out is that the NBA Finals allegedly have been used as this marketing scheme for the 98 Bash at the Beach involving Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone, who have been in cahoots with Eric Bischoff, head of WCW, to effectively get some free promo in front of 72 million people.
That's right.
Watching this thing.
We mentioned Rodman earlier, skipping practice to go to be in WCW Nitro early on. That is presented as an isolated event. Oh, what a wild card Dennis Rodman is. He skips practice during games 3 and 4 of the NBA Finals to go be a professional wrestler for a night. That's just the beginning. That's where the whole thing starts. It goes so deep, you won't believe it. The WCW, World Championship Wrestling, successfully co-ops and infiltrates the 1998 NBA Finals, and Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone are both complicit.
So you are alleging, even more explicitly, that the integrity of the 98 Finals was actually compromised.
Both of these men are working. I truly, we're going to watch these clips, and I believe by the end of it, you will 100% agree with me. These men are both working. They're putting on a professional wrestling promo.
Which is to say, they are working as NBA players while doing a work.
Your Honor, I have some exhibits.
So I think this is where we just got to speed run through my childhood a bit.
Right.
Because it's June 98, June 3rd, Game 1. I remember this. Utah wins at home by 3 points.
That's exactly right. Game 2, Chicago wins by 5.
Chicago comes into Salt Lake City, weary or not, and gets out with a split.
So they're heading back to Chicago with the split. Its series is tied 1-1.
But Game 3...
a total humiliation for the Utah Jazz.
The Bulls win by 42. 42, right? I'm looking at the stats. So the Jazz have an NBA Finals record low 54 points, which is humiliating.
The next day after that blowout, Rodman basically goes, well, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to head out of here and go up to Auburn Hills to be in WCW Nitro.
I just love the way you threw Malone around like a dish rack.
So this is him skipping the practice as depicted briefly in The Last Dance.
The entire media focuses on how Rodman could possibly leave and skip NBA practice. Phil Jackson's telling the media that Rodman is gone.
When he comes back after one of his focus from the finals and everybody's...
No, he's only taking your focus away from the finals, not ours.
Yeah, he had been fined a combined $20,000 by the NBA and the Bulls, and
Rodman comes back in game 4 the next day and probably has his best game of the final.
What the hell, this is all about putting your balls on the line and shoot the basketball, So I did it. I think it's just due because all the things that have been happening to me the last couple of days.
Dennis Rodman is, based on his performance in game 4, is actually, to his credit, saying, look, I'm basically performing at 100%.
They're going to get the 100% when I'm on the court.
Rodman is in effect doing those two jobs at once. And I think the context here is important to remember. The Bulls are now up 3-1. I believe the Bulls think they're going to win the title.
In some of their minds, I'm pretty sure that, they think they should be swept by now, 4-0.
And I also think that Utah believes they're not going to win the title.
I think my concern is people don't start making plans for summer already.
Which would allow both Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone to go, why don't we start working on this professional wrestling thing that we both love?
So now the two timelines have converged.
Exactly.
They've crashed into each other at the 98 finals. And I do recall in my mind's eye, as I'm 12 years old, that it is Bob Costas taking us to Game 5.
And if it all ends tonight, he will leave with that rarest of athletic distinctions. He will leave without ever having relinquished his position as the greatest player in the game.
Now, I've asserted that WCW has
goosebumps, by the way,
co-opted and infiltrated the NBA Finals. This is the proof. Your Honor, may I present to you Exhibit A.
They swing it over to Harper. He misses off the baseline, and Morris takes the rebound.
Malone and Rodman get tangled up.
As Rodman and Malone were entangled.
Malone sort of gooses Dennis Rodman, picks him up by his shorts, throws him out of bounds. Rodman tries to get past him, and Malone brazenly trips him here.
But Neil, we both know 90s basketball was different. They were built different. It's physical. We've seen stuff like that before.
You're right. However, may I present to you Exhibit B, 60 seconds later. The breakout from Karl Malone. He dunks it here on Rodman, and watch this. Bang. You'll see it here on the replay.
I don't know if that's a technical foul. However, the referees right now are trying to say, hey, we got Malone and Rodman right there. We're not going to let it get out of hand.
And that's the point. Karl Malone knows the camera is on me after I score. And he gets the broadcast talking about this feud between these two guys. That's the whole point.
They're up to something.
It's exactly what Bischoff wanted.
It is funny that the Jazz do win that game.
Yes.
Right? They win Game 5. So they're down 3-2, which means the series isn't over.
And you'd think, because of that, you'd think that those two guys might go, well, maybe we should turn down the pro wrestling promo work. But it's exactly the opposite. They turn it up during Game 6.
I have a feeling there's another clip.
Your Honor, Exhibit C.
You watch Malone and Rodman battling under the boards.
This is like a virtual recreation of the Game 5 clip you just saw. Ron Harper again misses the shot on the baseline. Malone and Rodman battle for the rebound. And this time, it's Rodman who trips Malone. I think they're starting to understand the formula that when we get tied up, the cameras will be on us. And if we were to seed this rivalry, to promote this match, it would be in one of these tie-ups, one of these moments that can be camera time for the two of us to mix it up.
It does seem that tripping is in their moveset.
And that's the foundation. It's about to pick up steam, and it does so with Exhibit D, ass slaps.
Watch the byplay here between Malone and Rodman. A sign of respect, actually, it appeared to me.
Okay. Well, Bob Costas, voice of journalistic color commentary, seems to be unconvinced. This is sportsmanship to Mr. Costas.
Bob Costas is falling for it. He's falling for it in that moment. And it's the reason why I had to bring in an expert witness. I'd like to call to the stand.
Wait, who are you now bringing into our courtroom?
Former Chicago Bull, 3-time NBA champion, Bill Wennington.
Let me be the first to congratulate you on the 1998 NBA championship. Congratulations on winning that.
Well, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun, and since I left the Bulls, they haven't won another championship. So.
Yeah, the curse of
I took him this theory. I showed him these clips. I needed to get his take on this as an eyewitness. I have a couple pointed questions. Let's show those butt slapping clips.
A sign of respect, actually, it appeared to me.
Now, do you think do you think they're showing a sign of respect? Do you think they're screwing with each other? Is Bob Costas getting played?
I think Bob Costas is just trying to be proper. But also, they're both smart enough to understand that they're not going to get thrown out of the game, or technically they're not going to have a fight, an all-out brawl.
So for those not watching on YouTube, which you really should be at this point, Bill Wennington has an incredible handlebar mustache. He looks like a pro wrestler.
Fantastic, yeah.
But to me, right, like, it's hard to discern Rodman being a wrestler from Rodman just being Rodman.
And I turn the screws on Bill for that reason. Do you believe that is professional wrestling bleeding into the 1998 NBA Finals, Game 6?
I want to say yes, but I want to say no. I think he's playing along the fact that, you know what, hey, I'm not going to let you outshow me. I mean, they're both smart businessmen, and it's just playing into it a little bit more. But you got to play into it and not lose focus. For them, it's marketing. And it helped them out for lack of a better word, a big payday in July. So it was free advertising.
He is admitting he knows this is marketing for their professional wrestling match. This is a guy who plays for the Bulls, is at this game telling me he wants to say yes. The only reason he also wants to say no is because I'm radioactive. This idea is going to tear apart NBA fandom.
But the idea that this is dispositively wrestling.
Right.
I mean, again, we're watching basketball and imputing motive, sir.
May I present to you Exhibit E. Now you'll watch here. Malone gets the ball in the post, wheels and scores. Seems like a normal basketball play until... What is that? What is that? What is that, Pablo?
Okay, I admittedly did not remember that. He's throwing up the diamond cutter.
The diamond cutter in the finals during the game. And this is Game 6. The Jazz don't have control of this game
Again,
yet.
For those not watching, you got to, but that also feels like it could just be him, I don't know, making like an O or something with his hands.
Perhaps it's just a one-time thing. Exhibit F, play it.
19 points.
Malone, this is the very next
Malone
play.
Tries to answer and he has 20.
There it is again. Pablo, it's the very next play. They feed Malone in the post again. He wheels, hits the shot, and throws it again because he's thinking, if you didn't catch it the first time, I need to do it again. It's a concerted effort to make sure that wrestling is in the NBA Finals.
Okay. So, game recognized game, Neil. I did not know you'd have A, B, C, D, E, F. Yeah, 6 exhibits escalating to a level of proof that I must say this has been persuasive so far.
Pablo, I've not even gotten to the biggest one or my star witness.
How many more exhibits are there?
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
This Father's Day at Lowe's, score free gifts for the greatest dad. Right now, get a free select DeWalt, Craftsman, or Cobalt tool with purchase of a select battery kit. Plus, get a free Werner 2-foot aluminum ladder when you buy an 8-foot fiberglass ladder. Shop these deals and more this Father's Day at Lowe's. We help, you save. Valid through 6/15 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
So, Neil, where are we?
This is the big one. Again, just to set the table. Game 6, 98 finals. And again, in 1998, there's like 15 things on television. 30+ million people all watching this game.
It was a simpler time.
Yes. Game 6, this is considered one of the great moments in Michael Jordan's career. This is the big moment. This is the moment that I remember as a kid. I'll never see it the same way. Exhibit G, the entanglement. You remember this play.
Yes, I do.
Here they are. They're getting tied up.
Infamous.
Yes.
Battling like crazy, but can't quite hold on to it.
When people talk about NBA Finals
Right.
moments where players get heated, they reference this moment.
Seeing this with your previous 6
Yes.
exhibits does make this hit different.
Wait until you see the replay, Pablo.
Karl Malone, regrettably, are scheduled to wrestle in one of those bogus events next month. Why Malone wants to lower himself to that is anyone's guess. And Rodman apparently wants to start the wrestling now.
When I was a kid and I watched that play, I was like, oh my God, these guys hate each other, which is exactly what Bischoff wanted, so I'd buy the pay-per-view.
And I can also just tell how disappointed the voice of gravitas, Bob Costas, is as he sits courtside.
Which is why I had to make another call.
So is Pablo in on this, or is just the two of us?
Just the two of us for now, and then these clips.
This is me and Bob Costas in 2025.
What do you remember about that moment? How do you see that moment now? Has it changed at all?
Well, there's a backstory there. It used to be the shock grew out of the art. The shock grew out of Marvin Gaye and sexual healing, but that was art. The shock grew out of Elvis. The shock grew out of George Carlin and Richard Pryor, but they were brilliant and they were doing social commentary.
But don't take my word for it. Ask the president. I meant the president. We in trouble.
Now we were living in a schlock celebrity culture where the shock was the only thing. There was no content of value there. And that's what I saw as Dennis Rodman's celebrity, a kind of dopey Jerry Springer world, Kardashian world celebrity. And I said that many times, parenthetically, even during games. But I always gave him full credit.
His tired freak show continues, but on the court, he brings unique talents.
Not only as a unique player, but I had heard even then that he was a gentle soul, that he was generous, that he was kind to those he came across. And subsequently, Dennis and I have had conversations, and I'm sure that if we had an opportunity to sit down and have dinner together, we'd find a lot of common ground. I don't dislike Dennis. I dislike that part of the culture, which now is so far down the road, there's no getting back. But I disliked that aspect. And I also disliked the fact that wrestling, even then, and this was before my interview with Vince McMahon on HBO.
You want to let me finish here for a second, pal? Shut your mouth and let me answer the question, all right? I'll be happy to answer.
But even then, I could see that it had moved away from the kind of good-natured wrestling that I liked as a kid and toward that sort of attitude era, that sort of crass. It's no longer tongue-in-cheek. It's no longer good-natured. So I'm thinking, why in the world would Karl Malone, not that Karl Malone is necessarily a paragon of virtue, but why would he want to get involved in that? So this wrestling match was pending between Rodman and Malone. And it's with that backdrop that I just laid out for you that they become entangled. And it looked to me like that entanglement wasn't just a natural outcome of what can happen in a basketball game. They were trying to prolong it and kind of emphasize it because it drew attention to what was upcoming, from which they both would profit. Now, in retrospect, I said they got to call a flagrant here.
No, they got to call a flagrant here. They've got to call a flagrant.
They have to call a flagrant here. So probably I overstated my objection in that narrow instance, but my overall objection, I stand by. 27 years later, I stand by.
After the entanglement, the game broadcast, NBC cuts away, but The Last Dance had extra footage. Malone and Rodman start slapping each other's asses again.
I tell you what, I love what I'm seeing, the battle between these two guys.
But watch Rodman here. Watch Rodman's reaction.
Oh, this is a different...
Look at him. Ooh! He's acting. He's pouring it on.
Okay, so now I know that there are so many more ass slaps than I had anticipated.
These men are guilty, Pablo.
He's popping his hip. He has his elbow at a triangle. He is a cartoon character.
That's right.
Gesturing unsubtly about his ass having been slapped by Karl Malone.
These two men are guilty. They're guilty of promoting professional wrestling in one of the most iconic NBA finals ever, and Bob Costas isn't buying it anymore.
Well, that clip captures what I was just about to say. I knew after they untangled from each other, I knew that there was no real animosity because they patted each other on the butt. You could tell it was all fake. But here's the thing. Why does that low-grade fakery find a place in something that is the highest grade of legitimate sports drama?
But just to put the finest possible point on this, Neil, what you are alleging here is that Karl Malone was not giving 100% effort to win a game in the NBA Finals.
I think the proof is in the pudding, but I also took this to Bob Costas. I just believe wholeheartedly that Karl Malone is not 100% dedicated to that basketball game. He is working a professional wrestling angle.
My point is, guys can be aware, guys can give a nod, guys can have a laugh without being lost in another land. There's no evidence here to me that either Rodman or Malone shortchanged the task at hand. But there is evidence that they were definitely trying to promote this, whatever you want to call it, in my view, trashy endeavor.
Does that take away from Game 6 at all to you? Does it take away from that moment at all to you?
Well, that moment, I think, was discordant, but the overall thing is so great. Yeah, it's like saying that, does a hair out of place mean that Cindy Crawford isn't beautiful? I don't think so. So, no.
As someone old enough to remember what Cindy Crawford is, I find Mr. Costas's argument also kind of persuasive, Neil.
Let's go with that for just a moment. You believe Karl Malone is locked in? That's what you're saying? You believe that he's not promoting wrestling? He's completely locked in this game?
Jordan with 43.
Karl Malone looks super locked in this moment, Pablo.
They ran that play a couple times prior. And Dennis and Malone have been fighting all game. And Karl just totally forgot that I was on the weak side.
Malone is doubled. They swat at it and steal it.
He's asleep at the wheel, Pablo. Karl Malone's asleep at the
Hold
wheel.
On. You are saying that this play, again, famous in The Last Dance and in life, Michael Jordan slapping the ball away in the play before he hits the game winner over Brian Russell.
Jordan, open. Chicago with the lead.
You're really connecting.
100%?
I guess they're going to Malone.
Is he asleep at the wheel?
Although he's been having a little bit of a struggle this quarter.
Looks that way to me.
So your closing argument is Michael Jordan's closing shot.
That's not the case. My closing argument is Exhibit H. You remember Jordan holding up the 6 fingers, but do you remember this? Dennis Rodman is promoting. They are working this.
He's doing the D-Generation X suck it.
It's funny how as a fan, you remember Jordan doing this and you don't remember that. But the second you see it, you go, of course, all these pieces fit. The puzzle pieces fit.
I need to take a break. Can we go to break?
And by the way, the prosecution rests.
I think you're on mute.
Workday's starting to sound the same.
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
I have followed you through the NBA Finals, which you've changed.
Thank you.
I mean, truly have changed
Thank
my
you.
understanding of.
Thank you.
But the thing that they were promoting, just to close the loop here, right? How was the 98 Bash at the Beach?
Not good. Not great.
The battle began on the court. A battle that was never settled. Now the time has come.
We started in Utah. We're going to finish it in San Diego.
The war is on.
Yeah, baby, Rosalind's gonna take you out. NWO style, baby.
It's Hogan and Rodman versus DDP and Malone at WCW NWO Bash at the Beach.
Listen, most professional
They
wrestling...
went through all of that trouble, Neil.
Most professional wrestling matches with non-professional wrestlers, there's a ceiling there. It can't be super great. Rodman spat on DDP.
Wow. There's a class act. One you would expect.
That was like a moment. And Malone is legitimately picking dudes up and slamming them on the ground. He's a beast. He's a
He
monster.
is very strong.
So it was what it was. It rated very well. I believe it was the second highest rated WCW pay-per-view in the company's history.
I mean, Karl Malone just like hulking out, by the way, wearing, I think those are jeans or maybe just like, I can't tell if those are jean patterned spandex tights or actual jeans, but he's shirtless. He at least looks the part.
As the story goes, Rodman didn't want to take his shirt off because Karl Malone looked like a Greek god chiseled out of granite.
This makes sense as well, actually, now that I review this footage in retrospect. But yeah, I guess it was worth it.
Malone, thinking they had won the match, has been denied here. And now he's mad.
And then Dennis Rodman goes off to film the movie Simon Says with Dane Cook.
So just journalistically speaking, I should say the following. We hear Pablo Torre finds out, did try to contact Dennis Rodman, did try to contact Karl Malone. The Bulls and the Jazz could not find either of them. Rodman has a booking agency, has an apparel line. They didn't respond. Karl Malone has these car dealerships in Arkansas and Utah. Nothing from them. Their shared former agent that you spoke to, whom we brought to you earlier, nothing. And we also reached out to Hulk Hogan through his agent and attorney. And everybody is just in the wind, they say.
That's right.
Clearly, there was not a desire to engage.
I'm radioactive.
With you, Neil, as I have realized what I've done here, which is to say, what did you find out today?
What I found out is that, to me, undoubtedly, without question, those two men are working a professional wrestling angle during the 1998 NBA Finals. And I want to say, to be clear, I am not telling anyone to strike it from the record books. I do believe it needs to be asterisked. I am a big believer.
You're calling for an asterisk.
Yes.
You're calling for an ass play asterisk.
Yes. If we're trying to decide something, I mentioned the greatest of all time.
You're trying to asterisk
debate.
Michael Jordan.
This is what we're doing here. If you are trying to decide greatness, then you have to be detailed. You have to be willing to use an asterisk. I'm doing it right here. If the main tenet to the idea that Michael Jordan is the greatest player ever rests on the numbers of him having 6 championships, you go at that number. I am not the biggest Laker fan. I am the best Laker fan.
Oh, Lord.
And if my job is to put LeBron James, who is a Laker, as the greatest of all time, I'm going at title number 6 by saying that title has been delegitimized.
I cannot stress enough how you have impugned your own objective credibility. Just as I was ready to co-sign the case you have brought before this court, I am inclined to think that actually you've been disbarred, but I also feel like there should be some higher authority than me that gets to proclaim that officially.
I did take this theory to Bob Costas. If the center of that argument is that Michael Jordan won 6 titles, then I need to go at that number. And what I'm saying is that Michael Jordan's 6th title is been delegitimized by the fact that Karl Malone is professional wrestling and not playing NBA basketball. He's not concentrating on the finals. Delegitimize that 6th title. Jordan's at 5. LeBron's at 4. If he gets one more, he's tied. He's got the scoring title. LeBron James is the greatest player of all time. Your thoughts?
I think that's one of the most inane arguments I've ever heard.
Neil, thank you for your work on this episode.
It's been a pleasure.
May God have mercy on your soul. Pablo Torre Finds Out is produced by Walter Abaroma, Ryan Cortez, Sam Daywig, Juan Galindo, Patrick Kim, Neely Lohman, Rob McRae, Rachel Miller-Howard, Carl Scott, Matt Sullivan, Claire Taylor, Chris Tuminello, and Juliet Warren. Our studio engineering by RG Systems. Our sound design by NGW Post. Our theme song, as always, is by John Bravo. And we will talk to you next time.